here's my thing. I decided about 2 months ago that I was going to read the entire ACOTAR series. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, 47, however many there are. And I decided this because I was tired of being left out of the internet trend of the fairy smut. I wanted to be involved. I wanted to understand. So, I picked up myself a copy of ACOTAR 1, ACOTAR 2, and now I'm reading ACOTAR 3, and I'm losing my mind. What do you mean Feyre told a woman to crush her hand? It is the best thing I've ever read in my entire life. I am losing my mind in my Christmas pants at 8:30 at night. Ah, yes, I found it. Smash your hand with the rock as hard as you can until I tell you to stop. Like, she mind controls this woman. Feyre goes, what's her name? Ianth. I thought that was it. Ianth. Sounds like anthem. The roaring that filled my mind was so loud I could barely hear myself as I said, pick up that rock. Lucian remained pressed against the tree. She obeyed, though a tremor went down her spine. Her mind thrashed and struggled against me. And then it says, the hand she'd put on him and on so many others, Ianth brought the stone up. The first impact was a muffled, wet thud. What am I reading? Like, this is what I want to be reading. Like, to be honest, I don't care about the fairy smut. I skipped that part. What I care about is this violence that entrances me. Ianth brought the stone up. The second was an actual crack, and the third drew blood. Her arm rose and fell, her body shuddering with the agony, and I said to her very clearly, you will never touch another person against their will. You will never convince yourself that they truly want your advances, that they're playing games. You will never know another's touch unless they initiate, unless it's desired by both sides. Thwack, crack, thud. You will not remember what happened here. You will tell the others that you fell. Her ring finger had shifted in the wrong direction. This is like Karate Kid, Fight Club, The Blacklist, Die Hard. What am I seeing? You are allowed to see a healer to set the bones, and she gives these instructions, and then, like, her whole hand is broken. Her hand was little more than cracked bones wrapped in shredded skin. Kneel here until someone finds you. What? Like, to be honest, I have not read a book, and this is what I love about Sarah J. Maas so much, is that she writes anger in a way where a lot of authors don't. A lot of authors, when they write female characters, they are writing from the understanding that the male character will have to find this woman attractive, which in and of itself means that the woman does not express anger. And a lot of authors, there aren't situations where the woman would need to express anger, so we don't see that part of someone, even though that is part of someone's personality. How they process anger, if they're violent, if they're not violent, are they aggressive, are they more submissive? We don't really know. In a lot of books, it's more of a rom-com. And because aggression is valued in men and it's seen as attractive, we don't see a lot of situations where the woman would be aggressive. And if that is the case, it's seen as a character flaw and something traumatic to be worked through. It's not really seen as a plus. It's not really seen as something to be valued or something to be admired in a woman. Even if, like in this case, the character Ianth, she has been taking advantage of men, she's been very cruel to them, and she deserves to be punished for that adequately. And so even if it is like a righteous cause, a lot of times the violence is seen as like a trauma response. Like, oh, you're violent because of this in your background, and the relationship will fix that, and then you'll be peaceful again. And that's the trajectory that a lot of authors take. Not this one, because holy heaven marmalade. This was not what I was expecting to read when I signed up for, like, oh, the fairy lord, and then the high queen, like, make babies and, like, fight a war. Like, there's a whole war and, like, a dense plot in this book. Like, look at how thick that is. This is, like, 685 pages in book 3. Like, this is like Harry Potter. 11-year-old me would have loved this. I would have never been allowed to read it. And what I love about women characters expressing anger is that it is accurate, because any woman will tell you they are angry all the time, every single day. I am angry so much, specifically at the grocery store when it is everyone's first day on planet Earth. And what I love about these female characters expressing anger, and I assume that we'll get to see other female characters do the same, because she does have sisters. Feyre has sisters such as Elain and Nesta, and I assume that we'll see sides of them as well. But right now, the story is still primarily focused on Feyre and like the early stages of the war and like the humans being harmed, as well as the fairies on the other side. And Feyre, especially, I've noticed this in book 1 and 2. She does not sacrifice her anger in order to preserve the relationship, which I touched on this a little bit in my previous commentary videos on like book 1 and 2. And I realized that I don't look like a very serious commentator because I'm sitting here on the floor in my Christmas pants, holding a book that is primarily known online as fairy smut, even though I will always advocate for the fact that a book is much more than the smut that it contains. Specifically, if it is written by a female author, then usually there are multitudes involved that you don't see because the internet loves to make fun of things that women like. Specifically, if those things happen to be things that men would not traditionally like, then those things will be made fun of. You should hear from the author herself. Sarah J. Maas did a great interview on Call Her Daddy where she talked about her motivation for writing a lot of things in the series. And hearing her talk about it, you can tell how much thought went into the plot and the setting and the characters and the world building, which is amazing, by the way. I haven't heard really anybody talk about the world building on a major platform. All they talk about are things that they want to degrade about the book series, but they don't ever mention the positives. Which, when you don't, that makes it sound like smut is the only thing in this book series, which it very much isn't. Like, in 685 pages, there's maybe 2 scenes that, like, if you don't like smut, are very easy to skip over. But the rest of it is plot. The rest of it is all world building, all character, and it talks about this war that Feyre is angry about inherently, because humans are getting involved and they're getting harmed, innocent people that did not want to be part of this. And fairies, they believe themselves to be better than humans. They think that they are better because they have powers, they've been around longer, they have their own courts where they, it kind of strokes your ego a little bit. They're not just like owning a farm in the middle of Kentucky. They have like a night court, and they have servants and these grand palaces, and they all look like Victoria's Secret models and GQ models, and I'm burping up my dinner because I'm passionate about this. There are many, many scenes, specifically in book 1 and 2, when Feyre is still with Tamlin and she thinks that, like, rice and beans, because, I like to call Rhysand, whatever the frick his name is, I like to call him Rice and Beans because the shortened version of his name is Rhys, but I always thought it was Rice, and so Rice and Beans came from that. Anyway, when she still thinks that Rice and Beans is a bad person, she's with Tamlin, she's with Tampon, and when they're together, there are scenes where she'll be angry about something, and you can tell that it's going to start a fight, and you can tell that, like, oh, if she says this, and she talks about how the humans are being harmed, then that's going to start a fight, and we don't want that, because then that causes harm in the relationship. A lot of books focus on harmony, we avoid conflict because we care about each other. We avoid conflict because we want to be close and we want to be considerate. And she just goes for it. Like, she just bulldozes stuff into his face, like, literally and figuratively, metaphorically and actually, and spiritually and astrologically. And it is one of the best things that I've ever seen, because she will use any excuse to talk about what matters to her, and she will use any excuse to be like, no, actually, this isn't appropriate, and we should be helping the humans, and we're not any better than them just because we're fairies and we have powers, and I'm like super cool, and I'm Wonder Woman now. Tampon consistently doesn't care about the humans as much, and he's willing to sacrifice them, and she gets into fights with him a lot over this topic, where she's expressing her anger in a way that could have been avoided, but the author chose not to. And I really admire Sarah J. Maas for that, because it changes your perspective on what you've seen in relationships. And I'm not even halfway through the book, and I just spent like 10 minutes yapping about this, but I am, how far am I? 177 pages into this honker of a paperback with my cute little Taylor Swift magnetic bookmark from her performance. I just realized no one's going to know what that bookmark is from, but that's okay. But I am not even halfway through this book. It's 685 pages. I'm on page 177. So I guess stay tuned for when I'm halfway through. Yo, my highlighter is so sparkly. And like, I'm getting distracted by my own reflection. I'm like a 4-year-old. All right. Anyway, I finally finished A Court of Wings and Ruin, and I have some thoughts. One thing, normally books that are this long, like I think this one is basically 700 pages. Yeah, 700 pages because it has like an excerpt of the next one, but it is like 703 pages of just pure vibes. Like the plot is there, the characters are there, and I thought that I would get bored the more that the book went on because normally with really long books, I find myself thinking that the author should have been more concise, that the plot should have been structured a little bit better, maybe a scene taken out here, a side character added here, and I find myself thinking that it was kind of just the author putting in what they wanted to, but that was not the case with this book. My love, we like to hug each other, like so. But I found myself thinking that for such a long book, the book is very structured, and it kind of plays out like a movie. Like you start, and it is a calmer atmosphere. The book starts, and Feyre is, I believe the book starts where she is living with Tamlin. She's duping him, as I like to say. She's living with Tampon. All right, she's not living with Rhysand beans at the moment, and she's duping him, and Tamlin is one of the most interesting characters in this book, especially at the ending part. And there are, in case you didn't realize, spoilers for the reading vlog. So if you don't want spoilers, maybe don't pick the video where I'm reading the whole book. There is a scene in the end of the third act of the book where Rhysand Beans basically dies, and Feyre has to put like life force back into him in order to like resurrect him from the dead. It is very biblical, and she needs like one other person, but no one else is there that can do it, even though like other people are watching, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but some of the world building I'm still kind of trying to grasp, and it's not really happening. I'm like a middle-aged mom trying to understand that Macy's is out of the candle that they wanted. It's upsetting, and I'm angry. But Tamlin comes in off the battlefield, and he is kind of their enemy at this point. Like, he is standing against what they believe in, and he is trying to do very bad things in the book. And he gives some of his life force to save Rhysand, I don't know. And he gives some of his life force, and you are very surprised by this as the reader because Feyre was with Tamlin and then she left him for Rhysand Beans. So it doesn't make sense why he would save Rhysand Beans, right? Because, like, that's his enemy. That's the guy that the girl that he loved is now with. And as he does it, he says to Feyre, like, you need to be happy. And then Feyre makes a similar declaration to herself about him, where she's like, I want him to be happy, and he needs to fix what's going on with him on the inside. And then she talks a lot about how anger is a very bad driving force to live by, and hatred is unproductive. A scene that I absolutely love where Feyre and Lucien are talking about why certain things are happening with the plot, and there's a war that's going to be starting because the fairies believe themselves to be superior to humans, and so they're harming humans. And Feyre, having human origins, feels very sympathetic to them, wants to help them. So does Rhysand Beans. And so she's talking to Lucien, and she's thinking about the fact that he was very close to Tamlin, knew all the stuff that Tampon was doing, and didn't stop him and didn't try to step in on her behalf. And it is a very good alluding. She does a good job alluding to the idea that most of the reason why abusers get away with what they do is because other people see the signs and ignore it, or because they're well regarded, don't want to believe that such a nice person would do something like that, and so they enable them because they're friends, they're family members. They want to look the other way and ignore what's going on in a relationship, even though there are very clear red flags with Tampon that he has anger problems and rage problems and violence and aggression towards Feyre, and that there's some weird stuff going on and that she's not happy. Lucian never did anything to ultimately stop it. And Feyre realizes that he was enabling it and that she would love to keep an independent friendship with him, but she can't because of what he didn't do. One of the biggest themes in this book is also grief and loss, because Feyre is also dealing with the fact that Nesta now has powers because Nesta got involved with the cauldron and she was given powers, so she is not human anymore. And Nesta is more angry than Feyre. She is very expressive with what she is upset about, what needs to change. She doesn't play by a rule book, and Cassian is falling for her, and she's very outspoken and expressive. And she's kind of, I think that there's a spectrum with the sisters, Elain, Feyre, Nesta, where Feyre is oftentimes in the middle, where she can be very soft and warm, or she can be very outspoken and aggressive when she needs to. And Elain is more so, that I've seen, more warm. And then Nesta is more cold and aggressive. So each one is like a different degree of the personality, which is a very interesting way of writing the characters. And that she is now part of this community where most people believe that they are superior to humans. So she's isolated from a lot of people that she should be friends with, given her current status, and that she's a fairy now. She should be able to relate to them and build friendships and relationships, but she's having a harder time because of the war. And so I notice she starts to overly rely on rice and beans a lot for all of her emotional connection, all of her relationship, and that's not sustainable long term, and that you need other relationships. And that's where her friendship with Cassian, I think, is one of the best parts of the book, because he is the one that trains her how to fight and use her wings and fly and train. And they have a very, very sweet platonic relationship. And she knows, and she kind of figures out that he likes her sister. And so she does some poking around to try and figure out, is he a good person? Does he have honest intentions towards her? And she finds out that he does. And she kind of steps back and she's like, okay, it's actually okay to trust people. And it's okay to trust him to be good to my sister because he is a good person and I've known him all this time. And she has to bring a mirror to the bone carver, which is basically this entity that can help you, but it's very mysterious and you need to oftentimes sacrifice something. And a lot of people get messed up when they do that, and they end up in a very harmful situation where the bone carver takes advantage of them. So you have to be very smart and tricky about it. And the mirror basically shows you who you truly are on the inside, which drives a lot of people crazy. It's kind of like the mirror of Erzid from Harry Potter, if anyone remembers. And Feyre sees some things that she's done that are more violent and more assertive and more aggressive, and that she has to come to terms with the fact that the good and the bad have to coexist, and what's happened has to coexist with what will happen that's good. And she looks at herself and she has to accept herself in the mirror and see herself as worthy in order for the bone carver to help her in the war. And that is one of the most impactful scenes, because, you know, as you grow up, you kind of have this tally list of things that you said you would never do and things that you didn't believe that you would ever do. And then situations arise where you end up doing those things. And you have to accept yourself, and it's very hard to do so. And you want to compartmentalize it, and you want to never believe that you would do those things and blue sky everything. But in order to live life fully, you have to accept that those things have to coexist and they have to live together and they have to blur together, and you have to be able to hold space for both simultaneously. And now I will read you a passage. This is maybe, I read this and it felt a lot like a motivational speech in a movie, like where in Harry Potter, Harry would give like motivational speeches to the class that he taught. And anytime that there's like a big battle, there's like a motivational speech beforehand. But to me, it really resonated with me because the last school year that I had, a lot of stuff went wrong and a lot of stuff happened that I wished hadn't. And I had to find the motivation to get up and do, the same stuff and do the same homework and the same classes. And I ended up kind of repeating a lot of the same things to myself. And it really felt like a moment that I should stop and take in what Feyre was saying and what Sarah J. Maas was writing. So it wasn't only the cost of life that ripped and devastated and sundered, it was the altering of the soul with it. The realization that I could perhaps go back home to Valaris, perhaps see peace achieved and cities rebuilt. But this battle, this war, I would be the thing forever changed. War would linger with me long after it had ended, some invisible scar that would perhaps fade, but never wholly vanish. But for my home, for Prithian and the human territory and so many others, I would clean my blades, and I would wash the blood from my skin, and I would do it again, and again, and again. And I love that part because she talks about how some things are more important than comfort, and some things are more important than feeling like you're home and feeling like you're back in your old life. Because your old life isn't always achievable to go back to. You have to make sense of the world as it is now and the world that you now live in and be able to stand up for the things that you believe in. And that is the overarching plot of the book. That is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas, 703 pages that I finished. And I had so much fun reading this, and I'm very excited to get to book 4. So comment below, let me know what you thought of the book. And let me know what else you want me to read, if you want me to read Crescent City or Throne of Glass. And thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!